I would appreciate if you put the whole name there, so.
I'll just say Dan Kurzman's book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, but you want me to write it down on that?
No, I can see the book from here.
Well, then I don't need to hold the book?
No, you'll hold it up. You'll hold it
I
up.
mean, I
also.
reach over?
Yeah, you'll reach over and get the book. No problem. This is easy. This is nothing tough here.
All right, but I thought it'd be awkward doing this.
It's all right.
You're not gonna be okay here. If you want, you could just do it.
Okay, you need to mic him up, right?
Yes.
Because you know my name is, they often pronounce it Kurtzman, which is.
Kurzman.
Right.
I know better. It's just I said they say instead of kibitzing they say kibitzing.
Yeah.
They make that mistake too. So.
Okay, we look good.
All right.
Looking good.
They always mispronounce Perez's name.
Who?
Perez.
Yeah, Paris.
Perez, they
Yeah,
say
they say
Perez.
Perez, they make it sound Spanish.
Spanish. Yeah. He's his son is one of our best friends. He was just
Really?
he was with us last
Yeah,
week in New
Yoni.
York. He
Yeah.
stays with us.
Yeah, what
Yoni
does-
Paris. He's a veterinarian.
What does his son do?
He's a veterinarian.
He's a vet.
In
Is
Ramat
he a
Gan.
friend of yours?
Very close
Yeah.
friend.
Simon Perez?
Well, his son is.
Son.
Yeah, what about
How
you,
did
do
you
you know?
get to know
Yeah, we
him?
met him when I need to meet him. His son
Couldn't
arranged
he-
it.
Couldn't he be a big help?
How did we meet him?
I don't see how.
Really?
He was friends with Alon Pincus, who was the Consul General.
He's always for,
the Israeli Consul General.
you know, cooperation
And
and this
we
and
met
that and so
at-
forth. I don't know.
We met at Alon's apartment. Is that how we met?
Yoni, no, he actually came up to our Christmas party in New York.
No, but how did we meet him? Through Pincus.
Alone, yeah, through Alone Pincus. What's this?
That was in his front pocket. You can see it through.
Yeah, give this to the boss.
Okay.
Whatever singles you have now gone.
Dan's pocket?
Yeah.
Yeah.
From his pocket.
You could see it
Now,
through the
what
shirt.
if I do
Oh,
start,
really?
if I do start to,
All right, you're making me.
Don't worry about it.
yeah, but then what do I do? Just keep going?
Just keep doing it. It shows, first of all, that you're natural and you're not an actor. You're not supposed to be just be comfortable. Do you need to be all set?
Is this gonna be as long as the other one?
I don't know.
All right. Well, we
It
got
may
20.
be.
We got 20 minutes left on this tape. I might have to stop you to change.
Yeah, you'll
it.
stop if there's you'll change the tape. Okay.
Okay. Ready?
You going?
Not yet. What? She's watching television.
No, she's listening to.
You can hear it?
I'm picking it up.
It's all right. It's in Italian. Don't worry about it. It's way in the background.
Yeah.
We could barely hear it here, so.
Anytime you're ready.
Okay. First, Mr. Kurzman, I want to thank you very, very much for the time that you're giving us to explore your research and the work that you did in the writing of your book, A Special Mission, Hitler's Secret Plot to Seize the Vatican and to Kidnap Pope Pius XII, that was just really issued, just came out last June. And the reason that we're really interested is that you were one of the very few people on earth, I would say, who had the opportunity to interview General Karl Wolff just after his release from prison, just prior to his death. And this book is based on a lot of the information that you got, Fab. And I'm wondering if you can share what it was actually share the actual interview that you had with General Wolff, what that was actually like, and the circumstances in which you came to do this.
I suppose very few people in the United States or anywhere have really heard of General Wolff. As a matter of fact, till the end of the war, even most Germans never heard of him. But he was one of the most important Nazis in World War II. But he always kept in the background. He was, of all people, the chief of staff. He had been the chief of staff to Himmler, Heinrich Himmler, who of course was the master of the Holocaust. And he helped him run the trains on time to Auschwitz and so forth. And in any event, eventually he was sent to Italy, where he was in charge of the SS forces there. And when Hitler saw that Mussolini was being overthrown in Rome, he decided that he was going to go into Rome and take over there and occupy at least part of Italy. And while going there, his idea was to take over the Vatican, and I have evidence in my book, A Special Mission, which shows that he intended to kill the Curia, members of the Curia, and perhaps the Pope, at least kidnap him, and take over the Vatican and take all of the valuables there and all. And this was his plan. Anyway, he called in General Wolfe, who was a great prodigy of his, and he said, "Look, Wolfe," and this I got directly from Karl Wolfe. I might say right here that it wasn't easy getting to see General Wolfe, because he had been in prison after the war, and they finally let him out because of a heart condition. And I had hardly heard of General Wolfe myself, even though I'm a reporter, because he was so much in the background. But I saw that he'd gotten out of prison in the German newspapers. I happened to be in Germany there when I was as a reporter. And
Who were you working for at that time?
the Washington Post.
You were a journalist for the Washington
Yeah.
Post, investigative reporter.
Yeah, investigative reporter. And I went to see. I went to his hometown. After he had gotten out of prison, that's where he went. Darmstadt, I believe it was, yes. And I didn't know how to get in touch with him, so I just I looked in the phone book, and there was his name. He still had his home there, even though he'd been in prison for many years. And I called up, and who answered the phone but General Karl Wolfe, and he had just gotten there from prison. So I said, "Look, I'm a journalist, American journalist, and I would like to tell your side of the story. I think it's, you were in prison for a while, you didn't get much of a chance to tell your side. Could I please come over?" He said, "No, I don't speak with journalists." But I talked and I talked and I talked. Finally he said, "All right, if you're here in 20 minutes, I'll see you for 20 minutes. So I was in a great hurry. Of course, I didn't have any, how was I going to speak with him, since he didn't speak very good English, very little, although he did speak some. So I grabbed a student, a German student, and I said, how'd you like to make a little money? Come with me, and I want you to, help me interview Karl Wolfe. And he agreed, of course, and we went to taxi, got there. Instead of 20 minutes, I had about 5 or 6 hours with him. And then I found out there were some incredible things about him. Among other things, he was given after, as I mentioned before, Hitler wanted to go into Rome with his troops. After he went there, he hoped to go into the Vatican and kill the Pope, or kill at least the cardinals and maybe the Pope. And he was given that order to prepare the way for that. Hitler said, according to Wolfe, and Wolfe was reading from notes he said that he read, that he'd written, during his talk with Hitler, in which Hitler said, "Wolfe, I have a special mission for you." That's why I call my book A Special Mission. "I want you to go into the Vatican, take over the place, and kidnap the Pope, and so forth." And of course, he felt he had no choice. According to him, he said he had no choice. But he decided, he was a very shrewd guy, Wolfe. He knew that the war was going to come to an end soon. And he knew that as Himmler's chief aide, that he'd be one of the first guys to be hanged if the Allies won. And so he felt that maybe the Pope could help him out, when the war came to an end with Germany's loss, and maybe speak up for him and save his life. In any event, he decided he was going to sabotage Hitler's plot. So he went to his new post that he had in northern Italy, which Germany had just occupied, and he prepared this plot. And so it's this plot which very few people know about, and which is really incredible, because Hitler was really serious about this. And the point was that there were a lot of Germans, diplomats, and others in Rome, Germans with influence, who were against this idea of the plot. Wolf had returned had gone to Rome and told his people about, he wasn't supposed to, Hitler said, don't tell a person about it, the only person who knows about it is Himmler. Don't tell anybody about it, because he knew that some of his own people would be against it. But he did. He told some of the people around, diplomats there, who were opposed to Hitler actually. There were Germans who were anti-Hitler, secretly of course. And there was sort of a conspiracy among them to somehow make sure that the plot didn't go through. And my book involves that and goes into the details of how it was foiled and how in the end General Wolf managed to convince Hitler that if he went ahead with his plot, that there'd be a revolution in Spain, that he couldn't, in Italy, and that it would be terrible for Germany around the world and so forth. And Hitler, agreed not to do it.
What is your impression, I would say, if you were to say, do you believe that this is factual? This actually happened?
Yeah, well, the point is this. I never believe anybody. I'm a journalist who thinks that you have to have more than one opinion for something very important. And I managed to interview five or six or more of the Germans who were involved in the plot, who were in Rome at the time and also Berlin. And they, all of them, and I interviewed them individually, apart from each other, and they supported what he said and gave me strong, evidence that this actually was what happened, because nobody, nobody said that the other guy was wrong or whatever, or that Wolf was lying or anything. Anyway, I also checked at the Vatican, just short, while I was doing research for my book. And I spoke with Father Peter Gumpel, who was the chief of the committee that's investigating whether or not Pope Pius should be a saint. And he had access to every scrap of evidence that there is in the Vatican, because after all, he has to look in to see, everything about there was to be known about Pope Pius XII. And he told me that what I said was, what I heard was the truth. So I got it from a lot of sources, as well as some written sources. For example, a letter that one fascist leader in Italy wrote to another fascist leader in Italy who were close to the SS. And they said that one of the top SS people had told them about this plot and went into the details of how the cardinals were to be killed, murdered, and how the Pope was they would try to make it appear that the Pope was trying to get away, and then they kill him also, and they take over the whole Vatican. And I have this in detail. And so this is about as much evidence as you could get. And this is a true story. And as I say, everybody who was involved in that all agree on the details.
To your knowledge, how was the Pope made actually aware of the fact that this possibility existed, that he was going to be arrested?
Well, from what I understand, Wolf told one of his top people in Rome about this. Colonel Dahlman. Dahlman had a lot of connections with the Vatican. He was a sort of liaison between the Germans and the Vatican. And I understand that he let it be known to the Vatican that this was the case, and that the Pope should watch out. And one thing it was that the Pope was told was that there was fear among the Nazis that the Pope would speak out against when the Hitler planned to take over the Jews of Rome and deport them. Of course, as the sister Margarita just pointed out the reasons why he didn't speak out, openly against Hitler, because Hitler was out to get him and get the Vatican. they thought that regardless, he might speak out with the Jews of Rome because they were his neighbors. And so these anti-Nazi Germans in Rome, and Wolf through others, because he didn't speak directly with the Pope, that if the Pope spoke out, that this would seal the deal, and the Vatican would be gone, and that the only way to save himself and the Vatican and the Church was to remain quiet. And so, but the Pope found a way to try to help the Jews, regardless, because as Sister Margarita pointed out, the Pope learned about the Pope incidentally did not know when this was going to happen. He had no idea, and he took taken by surprise. As a matter of fact, I spoke with Princess Pignatelli, who was the one who informed the Pope that the Jews were being rounded up, and she told me that he was in utter shock. He had no idea that they were really going to do this, because in fact he told Princess Pignatelli that, but they promised me they wouldn't do it. Now they of course represent, I guess, some of the Germans involved, in Rome. But in any case, he was taken by surprise. It isn't true, like some people have said, that the Pope knew when it was going to happen. He still didn't do anything about it. But he did make the telephone call that Sister Margarita mentioned. And what happened at this conversation, between the Pope's representative, Cardinal Maglione, and German Ambassador Weizsäcker, who was very anti-Nazi, incidentally, was really interesting. And the details are really rather incredible, because Weizsäcker told Maglione told Weizsäcker, the German ambassador, that if the Germans didn't stop the roundup of Jews immediately, that he would be forced to speak out. And this scared the heck out of Weizsäcker, because Weizsäcker was afraid that the Pope would speak out, because if he did, that would trigger the kidnap plan. And Weizsäcker didn't want the kidnap plan to go through, for one reason. The one reason why he didn't want it was because he wanted to use the Pope as a mediator of peace between the Germans and the Allies, and which the Pope would like to have done if it were possible, but without Hitler. That they get rid of Hitler, and then the Allies, together with Germany, would stop the Soviet Union from attacking in Eastern Europe and so forth. So he was afraid that if the Pope spoke out, that would be the end of it. But the Pope did warn, but through Maglione, warned, this is very important, warned Weizsäcker that if the Pope spoke out, if the Pope, if Weizsäcker told, as I said, Maglione, that if the Pope spoke, would Maglione, that if the Pope spoke out, he would be gone. And Maglione said, well, if he's going to speak out, and regardless, unless you stop this killing, driving all these Jews in these trucks to the train station. So in the end, I can't go into the details here because they're complicated, but in the end, the Pope didn't have to speak out. He didn't feel it, because Hitler put through the order to stop the pickups of these Jews, and after about 1,000 were already taken. And so the Pope had a lot to do with that, in the sense that he did have a Nazi priest as
It was that, was that, that,
that did a Nazi.
hey, stop for 1 second, it's changing your tape. That's Pfeiffer.
What's that?
Pfeiffer, Father Pfeiffer.
Well, Father Pfeiffer was the messenger,
Right.
but
He went to General Stahl.
the general stuff. But I won't go into that detail because it's too much.
That's actually because what happened was, according to Gumpel, is that he didn't trust Weizsäcker to do anything. That he then used his other. Give me
Take it. It's that diet.
it's all right.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, whenever you're ready, you're
But-
rolling.
Okay. While you were researching the material on your book.
Should I finish what I said?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Finish. I'm sorry.
Where was I?
We were discussing the arrest of the Roman Jews and the intercession of.
Yeah, and the Pope, that's what the Vatican people tell me, that the Pope did send his nephew with a letter to a German priest who was known to be, have Nazi sympathies, and got this priest to write a letter to Hitler, saying that the pickups should stop, or there'd be a revolution in Italy, and just the same idea that Wolf had in mind. And at the same time, Wolf went to Germany and convinced Hitler of the same thing. And so Hitler, fearing then that there might be a revolution in Italy at all, because if he was forced to do something against the Vatican, should he say that should the Pope speak out? He didn't want he realized then that if the Pope speak out, he would be forced to do that, and then all hell could break loose. And so Hitler gave in, and that's how about 7,000 Jews were saved. But partly because of the Pope's
Intercession.
intervention.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you a question. In your opinion, based on your research, and I know that you've read a lot of the other books that are in this field, how would you rate the accuracy of John Cornwell's book, Hitler's Pope?
Well, it's not accurate at all, of course. The thing is this, he was looking at it all from a negative point of view, and just looking for the negative parts and then exaggerating them. It was, I think, totally wrong. I think he himself had made some admissions of that nature. And I was very surprised when, after my book came out, I saw a review of my book, a special issue that appeared in the London Times, and I saw the writer of that review was him, and Cornwell. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to tear me apart for being objective. And because I try to be objective in my book. I mean, I didn't go in there saying I'm going to write a book that makes the Pope look good or bad or anything. I'm a reporter, and I try to find the truth. But I wrote an objective book. I try to make the Pope look like a human being, and with all the things that all human beings have, that are good and bad and so forth. And so I was very surprised when I saw that the review was very favorable, and that he actually said kind things about me. That really shocked the heck out of me, and made me feel that, gee, maybe I did something. I actually got him to maybe change his mind a little bit.
Also, Susan Zuccotti's story of Beneath His Very Windows. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I read that, but I think that basically, again, it was an unfair picture. You can take little things that happened and then make them blow it up, and try to make it this draw false conclusions. I mean, he's got a lot of research there, but you know, it's not only the research that you need, it's your interpretation of the research, and I just don't agree with her interpretation.
Right. A lot of people had said because they don't have access and did not have access to a lot of records and so on, that you're sort of looking at what happened from the outside without really knowing what was going on behind the scenes and under the table. We have examples, for example, of the Pope sort of ran an underground railroad from 1939, possibly before that, 1938, through 1945, rescuing Jews from Spain and Portugal to go to the Dominican Republic. And we have the man who did this, the priest is 96 years old. We interviewed him in France. He's still very lucid and very much alive. And he's telling exactly how this had to take place. I don't know if you're aware of this particular situation where the Vatican interceded personally to save so many Jewish lives. Because there could be as many as 100,000 Jews saved.
In my book, I indicate that the Pope helped to save a lot of Jews by getting them to descend to Domingo, in the Dominican Republic, which incidentally I'm not surprised that the Dominican Republic would help a lot of them, because as a reporter for the Washington Post, I covered that the Dominican Republic as a Latin American correspondent for them, and so of all the Latin American countries, in fact the countries in the world, I would say that they'd probably be more welcome there than almost anywhere.
This was, but you needed General Trujillo to give permission for this.
Of course, you needed the general to give permission.
And this was directly behind the scenes, and that the telegrams that would be sent twice a year to get visas from General Trujillo had to be doubly encrypted, because, and this is something else I wanted to ask you about, that if you knew of some of the covert methods in which the Vatican had to operate to send messages, did you know about any of these methods or the code?
Messages to who?
Like when they would write letters and so on, that letters that would either be destroyed or they would have to be
Well, most of what I've learned is that the Pope realized that if the Nazis ever got a hold of written messages, that it could really spell the end of the Vatican. Because you see, most people don't realize that Hitler was really out to destroy the Vatican. It wasn't just a minor thing in which he was thinking about it. He had plots and plans to do that. And the least little thing could have touched that thing off. It's a miracle that it didn't happen, actually. Most people don't realize that. In my book, I go into the details of how close they came to doing that. And so, of course, the Pope, the Pope, when he had been Secretary of State under Pius XI, had done more to build up the church than almost any Pope. I mean, he strengthened it enormously. It was his handiwork. And here he saw his handiwork about to go down the drain. So, he was very, very much influenced by that. And but I might say this too, that he was convinced that if he did speak out, openly, publicly, and directly, explicitly against Hitler, that could have triggered this plot, which he knew about. Or even before he knew about it, he knew that this was in Hitler's mind. He got plenty of evidence of that, which I go into the book, into this with quite a bit of detail. And so, he knew that if he spoke out, that Hitler would move like that, or that he was convinced of it. At the same time, he also knew that Hitler would react not like saying, well, look, I mean, if the Pope spoke out, I got to do something. What he would say is, get the rest of those people who are in the various Vatican institutions, which was harboring these Jews, and get the priests and others, the nuns and everybody who was helping the Jews, and let's get them all and kill them all. And so he probably, from what I can understand, saved, you get such different figures, anywhere from 100,000 to 800,000 Jews who were saved in these various institutions, which, even though they didn't get, to address your question, even though he didn't get, in most cases, a written, something in writing which says protect them, he let it be known. He sent priests around. The word got around, and then the institutions knew what the Pope wanted, and the Pope wanted them to just to save as many Jews as they could. And it's because if he'd put it in writing, I can understand that if he put it in writing and the Nazis got a hold of those writings, that could really trigger something. Because that letter I spoke about, in which one fascist, Italian fascist, wrote to another Italian fascist what they were going to do during the kidnapping, killing all the cardinals and so forth. It showed that what would have happened to him in the church if he had spoken out. And then as one of these anti-Nazi Germans told me, and he wrote about it after the war. If his name was Kessler, von Kessler, he was the deputy to von Weizsäcker, who was the ambassador to the Vatican at the time, who also was very anti-Nazi. And Kessler told me, he said, look, if the Pope had spoken out publicly, Hitler would have taken all these other Jews that were in hiding, hundreds of thousands, and not one single Jew would have been saved, and the church would have been gone. So he said, you can't blame the Pope for that. That's what Kessler told me, and he was very anti-Nazi. As a matter of fact, he was part of the Nazi conspiracy to overthrow, in 1944, to overthrow Hitler. And I might add something here, which is very telling, which few people know about. In 1929, there was a group of German militarists who were very anti-Hitler and who wanted to overthrow Hitler, and they were in contact with the British.
1939.
Pardon me, 1939.
Yeah, 1920. Yeah.
And they were in contact with the British.
Right.
But they knew they had a hard time keeping that contact with the British. So they asked the Pope, who had just taken over in 1939 as Pope, the Pope Pius XII, if he would be their
Go-between,
contact with the British, and give them give one side information, the other side information, and so forth, and to get the British help. And by doing that, he risked his own life as well as the life of the Vatican, because if Hitler would have found out about that, he wouldn't have waited a day before he went into the Vatican. The plot failed because in the end, the British were suspected that maybe these generals were not real. It was all a trick, and they wanted to know the names of these generals, and the Pope wouldn't give it to them because they would have been killed if we had. And so the British backed out. So that failed. But the Pope, anybody who says that the Pope was worked together with Hitler or was his
Collaborator. Yeah.
collaborator was ridiculous. They hated each other. Each wanted to kill the other.
This is I'd like your comments on this, because again we're going to go to the placard at Yad Vashem, and he has the last sentence in here said that, referring to the Pope, that his silence and absence of guidelines obliged churchmen throughout Europe to decide on their own how to react. How would you judge that statement, the accuracy of that statement?
Well, the thing is this. He didn't say act as you want, as you feel. He didn't say that at all. What he did say was that you watch out how you say it, because everything depends on, on whether the church and a lot of other people are going to be saved. But he said, be careful how you frame it.
Yeah, but
he never said that any way you
No,
want.
I understand that, but this gives you the impression that he said nothing, that he was sort of cowering in the corner,
No,
shaking
no, it's not-
at a fear, and that everybody had to do things
No,
without
he talked to his, the people, the church people. They knew exactly how he felt. And as a matter of fact, he made sure that, one particular case in point was in Rome, where in one case, there's a couple of Jews wanted to get into a particular convent to be saved. And the people in the convent there, the sisters, knew that the rule was that no man could get in, and there was a man and a woman, that wanted to get in. And there was, of course, there was a solid rule that no man could step into the place. And it was reluctant to take him in. And the Pope immediately intervened. He said, let him in, let in anybody, man or woman, into the convent. I mean, he did everything, he really did everything he could within the bounds of without doing it publicly in a definitive way, because he knew that the church was standing at the abyss.
If you were to guess, assuming the Vatican archives were to be open tomorrow, and we had inventoried every single thing in there, would you say that there's going to be a vast amount of information that they're going to find, or that they'll probably find very little because of the fact that a lot of this had to be covertly done?
Well, I have no idea, but all I can do is say that of all the information that is available now, there is none that would indicate that he didn't do his nothing that really amounts to anything would show that he didn't try to help the Jews.
Yeah, but but anything in writing. I'm saying, do you think that there's going to be any written instruments there?
That I cannot
If you were
tell.
speculating on your own, though.
I couldn't speculate because I have no idea.
Yeah.
As a reporter, I can't speculate on something
Right.
like that. I only report on facts.
Right. This is very, very important. Because we found that a lot of documents were intentionally destroyed. A lot of documents were coded. We understand telegrams, messages were done.
If you have any evidence, if anybody has any evidence of that, fine, but I haven't seen any evidence of it.
Right, right.
So without evidence that this is true, I
Mhm.
cannot say anything.
Right. I'd like to read to you the statement at Yad Vashem and just get your opinion on it, on how it's written and so on. It says, Pius XII's reaction to the murder of Jews during the Holocaust is a matter of controversy. In 1933, when he was Secretary of the Vatican State, he was active in obtaining a concordat with the German regime to preserve the Church's rights in Germany, even if this meant recognizing the Nazi racist regime. When he was elected Pope in 1939, he shelved a letter against racism and anti-Semitism that his predecessor had prepared. Even when reports about the murder of Jews reached the Vatican, the Pope did not protest, either verbally or in writing. In December 1942, he abstained from joining the Allied declaration condemning the extermination of the Jews. When the Jews were deported from Rome to Auschwitz, the Pope did not intervene. The Pope maintained his neutral position throughout the war, with the exception of appealing to the rulers of Hungary and Slovakia towards its end. His silence and absence of guidelines obliged churchmen throughout Europe to decide on their own how to react. Now, if you to look at this statement, based on your research, how would you rate this statement as being an accurate mirror of what occurred?
Well, I don't think it's accurate because what he did was, as I said before, that he did let it be known to his churches and everybody in them that they should do the best they could to try to save the Jews, and that not to do whatever you want, and if you don't want to let them in, don't let them in, or whatever. I mean, that is silly. The fact is that he did everything he could beyond going over the threshold, which could have meant an end to the Vatican and maybe an end to a lot of these people who are being hidden in the various institutions.
So I'd like to thank you very much for the time you've given us today. and for the opportunity to speak to you about this. We look forward to expanding this as we get more information.
Thank you, and if this play, which based on my book comes out, I hope everybody will try to get a first row seat.
Absolutely. I'm going to buy the popcorn. Dan, thanks so much.
Okay.
You know what we want to do now?
How was it?
Okay,
Good.
do we have to?
Yeah, you and I are just going to sit,
No.
do a brief.
Well, why don't you do it?
Oh.